I forgot my line.
Who are you? Where do you work? And what's your best advice?
Are we doing this now? Be prepared
Yeah.
and understand what Phil wants. That's the best advice I ever got, and I've forgotten it.
You're so funny, Sean. Well, for those of you who don't know my friend Sean and Doyle, this is his book, Not Shift 19 Practical Business Driven Ideas for an Executive in Charge of Marketing, but not trained for the task. He's the CEO of FitzMartin, and he's been doing cool stuff for a long time. Their whole agency is all about the science and art of growing revenue. So, Sean, where why'd you write this book, man? Because I got to tell you, I love that it is focused on those who have to run marketing but have never got any training.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think there's a whole world of people in charge of marketing that have never been trained for the task. And you know what? And I joined them. I joined them. I went to a liberal arts college. I mean, I knew how to read and literature and write and do a little bit of science and geology. But I think the big aha moment in my career was this idea right here. Ready? Marketing is taught that we equip sales to sell. We're preparing them to go out and right? Wrong. Wrong. Marketing has got to be equipping buyers to buy. Okay, that sounds like some marketing schmuck semantics, but it's not that sales doesn't have enough tools. For 15, 20 years of my career, sales guys were, oh, I need this tool. I would have closed, I would have covered my monthly nut. I would have hit the goal if I just had this tool, and marketing dropped the ball. Dang it. But it's not that they needed another tool. It's that the buyers weren't equipped to make the change they needed. So I think the
Mm.
aha moment for me was one, what I didn't learn in college is that I needed to have an understanding of the buyer first, not sociographically and demographically and profiles and all that kind of stuff, but I needed to understand the pains that they have, whether they're personal pains, strategic pains, financial pains. I've got to understand those pains. What matters to them is way more important. And 99.9% of all marketing starts with what matters to the person selling. No, you got to talk to what matters to the buyer. And that's all that really matters. And it also gives you great freedom. If it's not a fit, then I don't have to sell you anything. But great. I like that a lot. But here's the bigger aha. And this is the basis of our company, that you've got to have an understanding of the processes buyers go through. And it's good for us that all human beings go through the same processes as they change, and buying is an act of change. I've trusted something. I've trusted Fords. Now I trust Toyotas. I trusted Coca-Cola. Now I trust Pepsi. I mean, those are small anecdotal things. We live in the world of emerging middle market, big CapEx stuff. Guess what? Teams of decision makers, procurement, whatever, they all still go through the same process. So if I know what the buyer's problems are, what pains there are, it informs the products I create, what I can do and how I can help them. And if I understand what their needs then are as they go through the change, that gives me the ability to quit selling, and I can equip Phil to make the change that he needs that's in his best interest. Does that make sense? Like that. Did everybody learn that as a freshman? Am I the last guy? Oh.
Well, I think that is such a massive shift in our thinking, right? The whole equipping the buyers to embrace and transform and do all this good stuff. I mean, I don't, I've been selling not maybe not as long as you, but pretty darn close, man. And like you, right? Like I'm like, what the heck? Like that's kind of news to me. So, what was the flashpoint there, Sean, that caused that shift? I mean, was it you had someone who lost a big deal, or was it
Oh
just,
gosh.
you woke up in the middle of the night, or what the heck was the epiphany, man?
Two things happen. I'm working in twos today. So one, I've been fascinated with things like disc profiles. And if you think about a disc profile, Myers-Briggs, there's what's the one with the wing 9724? I never get that one right. But
Enneagram.
There we go, enneagrams. The beauty of that demonstrates the beauty of what we call centricity. That's the understanding of the changes the buyers go through. So a disc profile like helps me understand that Phil's an appraiser or Mac's a promoter or Jessica is a creative. And if I know that about the buyer inherently, or the person I'm trying to communicate to, inherently as a person who's trying to communicate any of these patterns, give me the ability to communicate better because I'm not communicating in my style now. I'm cognizant of the other person's buyer, of the other person's communicating style. Well, that is the same thing that we have to do as marketers, is understand the other person's style. And how do we do that? Because there's a million marketers with a million ideas, and most of them are wrong because they're, but gut instinct or what. And I'm not saying I'm the only one, right? I borrow the science from the trans-theoretical theorem of behavioral change. And that's why we call it centricity, because that's a lot easier. But that science gives us the pattern. And in the pattern, it states that there's 10 ways to communicate with somebody that's going through change and to help them, equip them to go through change. So the aha moment came when my largest client at the time, who was a Southeast regional bank, and they came to me and said, well, and what I heard was my biggest client, my most revenue, said, hey, we've worked with these two other agencies on this specific problem. They failed. We fired them. Do you want to try it? Well, when it's your biggest client, you've got no choice, right? Yes. The answer is yes, we want to try it. Oh, well, I had just read this science. So we mapped it. We took the time, we call it a sales barrier map or a sales tune-up, and we map all the communications in what was said in a process that looks a lot like change. It's a linear fashion process. And when we did it, what we identified was all the other agencies had used the same techniques of raising awareness, but this was a bank. Remember when I said it was a bank, Phil? Do you think your bank is doing anything that any other bank doesn't do? Maybe there's a little twist, maybe there's a little, but it's banking. Nobody needed more awareness of banking. And in this case, the 1,500 prospects they gave us, they knew the bank and the bank knew them. So we said, well, the problem here is they're not using the right processes. So we shifted the conversation. And of those 1,500 prospects, 91% of them took a phone call, 58% of them took the meeting, 40% of them requested proposals. And the bank, in the period of 6 weeks, closed $380 million of loans, deposits, and relationships. Did it work? Did that work? And are we creative advertising geniuses? No. We applied science. There's a pattern, there's a structure. We all buy into Myers-Briggs or Enneagrams or discs, but when it comes to marketing, we think blue sky is the thing to do. That's crazy. There's a pattern to the way people change. Understand that pattern and apply. And I think our job as marketers is to make sure there's 10 different tools, best practices in centricity that the science reveals. We didn't dream this stuff up. And we just make sure that every business has all 10 represented in their tool set. That's marketing and sales. If those 10 are there and we're talking about the other person's pains and needs instead of what we do, you got a winner. You're going to make more money. Well, that was one time. You got me fired up. You just kind of yank me off get the hook out, Phil. I mean, we know this works. We saw another pilot. We saw traditional marketing tools result in a $551 per interaction cost. And we saw the digital tools applied with what we were doing with centricity. It lowered that interaction cost to $144. We saw a lift in the value of relationships. In other words, in a pilot where we had a control where sales just did what they were doing, and then we did a control group where we pursued these high value clients, and we included the 10 steps. We included all the tools. It's not that we sold more, because Marketing doesn't close anything, sales closes things. But the value of the relationship where the buyers were exposed to all 10 best practices that enabled them to make the best decisions, the value of those relationships was higher. Lifetime value was higher. Man, this stuff works. It's incredible. What I was thinking, marketing equipped sales, was wrong.
Wow.
Mm, Don't want to
Wow.
preach, man.
That, yeah, no, I love that though. And that's such a mindset shift. And yet when you say it, it's like, oh, yeah, I get that. Like that makes sense. Okay, duh. Focus on your buyer. Like if I was to boil down what you said, right? That's focus on your buyer. So why doesn't it happen more, man?
I think, well, I don't think that's news. I don't think focus on the buyer's news. Do I dare
No?
challenge
Okay.
you on your own show, Phil? I
Sure,
th-
please.
I think I think that's a common message. I don't think you could go out to any communications expert and say, "Is this important?" I mean, everyone's going to say yes, and everyone's going to talk about, we've built profiles, and we've done studies. The best people have done voice of the customer programs. I would challenge that anybody who hasn't done a voice of the customer program, quote, because they know their buyer. I've been doing this for 25 years. I know my buyer better than anybody. No, you don't. And here's why you don't. It's not that you don't know them really well. Here's the deal. They're not going to tell you everything because they like you. Phil, I like you. So I'm not going to tell you how bad that shirt is you're wearing. That's a joke. Phil's wearing a really obnoxious shirt today. But you knew that because you know Phil. If a third party comes in and says, Sean, what do you think about Phil's shirt? I'd say, oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad you asked me that because somebody needs to tell him about his shirt. His shirt's terrible. But I'm never going to say that to you to your face, right? I don't want to hurt your feelings, especially I work a lot in the Southeast. We're crazy quiet down here. One of the biggest problems salespeople have in the Southeast is no one ever says no. No, I don't want to buy your thing, Phil. No. Now, other parts of the country, that happens a little faster. But here's what I'm trying to demonstrate. One, you need to get that voice of the customer, but two, it needs to be from a third party. Hire out. It's not that expensive. The value of the information you'll get because a third party can get your customers to say things they would never say to your face. It's extremely high. But the second thing, this is the big disagreement with saying the voice of the customer is critical, and it is. It's that what follows it up then, typically your marketing firm makes it look like awareness. And awareness is really cool stuff if someone has never heard of your company or your product. But guess what? Most people have heard, especially in the B2B. I live in B2B. Most people have heard of that. Okay, hey, current culture. Steve Martin, Martin Short. What are they pushing right now?
Right now, I don't know, some comedy. Oh yeah, they got something to
Soda
drink. Yeah.
pop. Yeah, what are they telling you about soda pop? Just try Pepsi. Because if Pepsi's not going out there saying, "Hey, have y'all ever heard of Pepsi?" Of course, we've all heard of Pepsi. The problem isn't that we don't know that Pepsi exists. The problem is we don't want to try it. So they're doing the right thing. They're using consciousness raising and social liberation. Those are two best practices that are common in the advertising space, and they're effective in the advertising space. My world in B2B, very few people don't know all the Pepsis and the Coca-Colas in that space. It's a small space. There's only 3 or 4 manufacturers that do what we need. What gets missed then in the voice of the customer, if your agency, if your marketing team doesn't have a framework like centricity, is all the things that happen in the middle of the sales cycle to the closing table that they're just gaps. They're just barriers. They're at best gaps, missing information. I would have equipped you, Phil, to make that change you needed, but I don't have any information. Right. But we should. And interestingly enough, marketing, I think, fails more often than supports sales and sales knows that. So sales can tend to push marketing away. I'd love to say marketing does not close deals. Sales closes deals, but marketing should help sales, not equip sales with tools, but should help sales equip the buyers with the information they need. with the tools they need, with the processes they need. How many marketing firms out there ever said, you know what? You really don't need a better website or more advertising. In fact, you've got too much traffic on your advertising. We need to turn some people away. And your big gap is there's not a good environmental control system, and your helping relationships model is broken, and your private commitment, public commitment transitions are failing. And I know you don't hear that because those are 5 of the late stage processes that very, very few people talk about. That's the crux of the decision. That's when the big decision's being made. So we spend all this money creating awareness, and we don't really help the buyers at later stage because it's less information. So if you don't believe me, go read Changing for Good. It's a good book if you're into kind of wonky behavioral science thing. And if you don't like that, centricity, come to my website. Free help. Go to the free help section. It's there. I'm too old. Phil's already said twice that I'm old. He said it very nicely, but so just have a process. If you do one thing with your agency, current agency, is ask them to tell you 3 ways. If you ask me, I'll give you 6. Ask them to give you 3 ways that they should be helping sales by equipping the buyers to make the right decisions. And if they can answer that question, then you've got a winner of an agency. If they can't, that's why you're wasting your money on marketing.
Wow. That's first, you're absolutely right. That's not normally what I hear. Second of all, I think your point about getting a voice of the customer program by a third party is so important, right? I mean, your friends are not going to tell you got broccoli in your teeth. So you walk around and you're like, I didn't know I had it, but I was with my wife all day and she didn't say anything. Now I'm lucky. My wife will let me know if she doesn't like my shirt. She loves it, by the way, Sean. Thank you very much. And with that, right, and with that, I do think that's super fascinating that we have folks yet today who still don't get that piece of revenue, right? They still don't get because buyers, what I mean, CRE or whoever that was said, oh yeah, buyers are 68 or 86, 21, whatever the heck, way down the pipe and making decisions. But the last 15 or 20%, there's nothing out there. There's nothing out there because it's like, oh, this is my secret sauce. It's like, no, it's not. You know what your secret sauce is? You're lucky that one of your salespeople asked a good question and uncovered something that was no fault of their own. I think that's what's often the real truth. So with that, let's that's the science piece. I love that. But your agency is also focused on the art of growing revenue. What's the difference, Sean? And how does that stack up, man? Because I read that on your page and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Art of growing revenue too. That's interesting because all I see, I see a lot of your talk about science, which I love, by the way. I love that because that's more proof, and that I'm more of an artist, so that's a different brain than I have. So talk to me with the art, man.
Whoop, I lost you. I'm sorry.
We're here, buddy. We're here. Sean.
Oh, okay.
There we go. All right. So the art of growing revenue. Let's flip that around.
Oh, great. Phil, I hope you are enjoying your live view with a commercial interruption. The art piece of it, people will think that I'm down on the creative piece, and I'm not. I think creative should be informed by this. And it can be freeing. The idea I mentioned earlier is this blue sky idea. Harvard did a study with the American Society of Architects, and they put children on a playground on a corner lot and just said, go play. And they observed these children, and these children played right around the playground equipment. And then they put up a fence, all 4 sides, another set of children, and said, go play. Now, where did the children play? Corner to corner, edge to edge. There was freedom inside the boundaries of that fence. So art needs boundaries. I believe that it can be incredibly effective if you give art, if you give creative teams, if you give your marketing firm, don't tell them blue sky. Tell them that you want them to understand how it works within the needs of the buyer, right? So give them the boundary of the voice of the customer. Give them the boundaries of who it is that's buying. Give them not just demographic, not just sociographic, not just B2B, not just your industry space. That's great. But what is the buyer's personal pain? What is the buyer's strategic pain? What is the financial pain? Those are boundaries. So give all the boundaries you can, and then let good creatives work in in those boundaries. And as an aside, in a world of bad production values, high production values, what do you mean, marketing boy? Well, let me tell you. So what's production values? That means you can shoot a video with your iPhone. That is true. Or you can shoot a video with a high-end production company and spend $1 million. That is also true. I would suggest you don't want to be on either end. You want to be in the middle. But your production values speak to you. Phil, you'd never wear that shirt to a bank. Okay, enough picking on your fun on your shirt. You probably would wear that shirt to a bank. But we would not go to our wedding looking sloppy. We would not go to an important professional meeting looking sloppy. So when you say low creative, low art, let's just save money. Let's just get it done. I've got a nephew in art school. Let's just get them to knock it out. Well, that's fine, but but it's going to reflect on you, and it's going to look as bad as you think it will. So yeah, you can do things cheaply just because you can. A friend of mine who's in the production business loves to say, "What I do is very simple. Tell stories with video." It's not easy, but it's simple. It's just not easy. And I think creative is that. So you get competitive advantage. Why business owners, why rationale? What's the rationale for spending the money? You get competitive advantage. You stand apart because there's a world of slackers who won't spend the money, and they're going to look B-rate and you're going to look world class. And that's what I want to be associated with. You could play that out. You could take it up as high as you want to the fanciest company, whatever maybe Apple, hey, they tell their guys what t-shirts to wear, right? Everything's finessed. Everything is finessed about that. And that would probably be the high end of art. And it's art. And notice I didn't choose just the graphics, right? It's the physical product, it's the customer experience, it's the way it feels and looks. I mean, the boundaries of art art should not have boundaries in that sense, right? It should be the entire customer experience. Because we're also good as consumers to go, you know what, I love the product, but man, the staff, they ticked me off. I'm not. Or you can have a great product, great experience, and totally lose your rep just because you didn't have a creative approach to, and by that I mean a well-designed, thoughtful approach to the customer experience. So I am a huge believer in art. I think it would be very hard to separate storytelling. The best art in the world, you can still go pay exorbitant amount. You can fly to Paris and go see a lot of great art. There's a reason art's still there. We value it. It communicates. It speaks to our soul. This is not a mathematical thing, right? There's just some things you look at. There's even Phil, you've got 89,000 photographs on your phone, right? But there's
Yes.
some of them that speak to your soul. There's some of them that just, whether it was the light or the person you were with or the memory, or maybe it was just a great photograph, Even you get lucky, right? So there's
Yeah.
there's there's value to that. Why not pay people who are excellent professional communicators?
Yeah, why not? Right. And I think that speaks to the consistency of it. I can get lucky and get one picture out of 89,000. And that is true, right? I mean, if I have enough time, if you give me the rest of my life, I bet I could shoot 100 good shots. Or we can pay
Mm,
an awesome photographer like a John D'Amato, go out there and take pictures and he's going to get it done probably in less than 3 hours. And the
But Phil, I've got
difference,
an
you
iPhone.
know,
I can take good pictures
right?
with my
Yeah,
iPhone.
come on, because it's yeah, but that's a great point, right? It's not about the tools. I mean, as a salesperson, right? It's not about the CRM. As a marketer, it's not about the fact you have Photoshop or Canva. I mean, there's virtually no difference. It's how you play that. I mean, music, same way, right? Like my buddy Mark is on tour right now with the 50th anniversary of Jesus Christ Superstar with the same instrument that somebody else likely could play, right? Like the same bass guitar,
Yeah.
it's a bass guitar, but Mark can make that sucker sing as opposed to somebody else who can just make it hum.
There was a great, for sports fans, there was a great tennis match where Jimmy Connors got challenged. And remember, he had the T2000, it was the first aluminum head. And
Yeah,
he got challenged that by some other famous tennis player, that if he didn't have that metal racket, he wouldn't be winning all these matches. So he was like, all right, give me the racket you want me to play with. And they got him some old wooden frame Wilson bent tip, ancient racket. And of course, the end, right? Connor smashed whoever the guy was. It's not the tool, it's the person, it's the idea. And and this is a hard one. I often find clients struggle sometimes to understand this, but sometimes it's even just about the journey you go on. What make sure you're working with somebody who's not the cheapest, but I'd rather work with somebody who's already got built in the contingency for the 3 changes I'm gonna make and for the extra meal. And I don't want you coming back to me and saying, "Boy, we were really taken. It was a big surprise when you asked for, those extra 3 meals at lunch." Like, just I wanna work with somebody who's a professional that has all that. They know all that. They know pay for the experience, and that's gonna be worth the money. It does
absolutely.
cost more, but you may save a day, especially in
Yeah,
video
well, and
sets. If you're talking about video, whew.
or it'll make more sales, right? I mean, that's the other thing. Because even though it costs more, using air quotes, the value probably longer lasting, probably higher ticket price,
Yep.
more there. No, totally, yeah, that's totally true. I mean, I'm working on my new book, and I am really pushing hard to get the best possible piece of each one of these, right? To make sure that the cover's tight and the interior's tight and the all the wording is tight and the layout of every chapter is tight because it does matter. I mean, I want the paper to be
Mm.
good. I don't want, I know that I'm not the cheapest consultant when it comes to things. I'm no Sean and Doyle, but I probably charge a couple dollars, right? So with that, let's bring this home, man. So the book, right, for those who haven't picked it up, shift, right? Practical business driven ideas. I love that, right? So if we're to crack this sucker open, right, and pick one of these, which one should
Mm.
we start with, Sean, if we're going to get started here? Because I
Mm.
flipped open to engagement. That may not be the one that you want to pick, and that's okay. But what do you think, man? I'll pull it open. You tell me which chapter. I'm going to hold it up, and you tell me why that
Let's go
one's one
engagement.
of the
You
important
already
ones.
did it.
Let's
Let's
do
go
engagement.
engagement.
There you
It's
go.
it's the
Let's
biggest
go.
challenge for me. So engagement has a big section on social media. And my now congressman, and if he's listening, Gary, you know who you are, once said to me, "What's the deal with social media? All it is a bunch of moms talking about their children's potty training." And I said, "Well, maybe."
What?
Now that was 10 years ago, to his credit,
All
15
right.
years
I was hoping
ago.
it wasn't 10 minutes ago because we'd have to be
Yeah,
driving
no.
there and kicking his butt. Keep going.
Well, yeah, and now he's got a team that does social media and he gets it. So social media can be incredibly powerful. And if you've got a laggard point of view around social media, if even in the B2B space, I sat with the CEO of a $100 million company this morning, and he pulled up the social media page and Facebook page and challenged me on a couple things that he thinks my firm could do better on, and said a couple things that were nice too. But so why is he spending money on it? This is a raw B2B company. I mean, you're never going to know who they are, but they're selling to some of the world's largest brands. They're selling in a serious way things that make serious differences in the world. And he is doing it because of culture. Culture's huge. And when you've got 50 employees, 100 employees, 300 employees, they're going to look at the social media to look at all kinds of social media. They're going to see what you're like. That it's a glimpse into the culture of your company. So it's serious there. Um, so culture also has other implications, and I think this particular leader I'm speaking of, he sees how social media and culture works upstream and downstream. So there are commercial application implications to social media. Their customers are buying it. Their channel partners are buying into this particular company's culture, which but tightens that relationship. It improves lifetime value. They're also so interested in it that there's commercial application in terms of market share and how it's impacting the country and in their space. People are watching and they're learning. They're doing things differently. There's end users involved. Well, let's go the other way. Let's go upstream. So the providers to them, the manufacturers that are sending and shipping truckloads of stuff into them, they're buying into this culture so much, and by buying in, the preference is occurring. Like at some point, every business has to well, if I'm going to serve Phil or Sean, I've got to make a bet on what my future is, right? So I want to lower those risks so the upstream providers and the downstream providers, the whole ecosystem is centered on that. So there are serious business implications to social media, and you've got to think about things in that capacity. They're to the point where you actually are seeing with this particular customer, we're actually seeing new customers coming in through it. Now that's unusual. Remember, I said it's a large capex B2B space. We're not, bringing people in to try those Pepsis with Steve Martin. It's a real business tool, and it's a serious business tool. It's another great example of we could do it with the iPhone and get the youngest employee in because they understand social, even if us old guys don't. Well, just understand what you're doing is you're presenting to a future employee, a future customer, because they're looking for validation. You talk about a late stage tool. Before I make a commitment of buying your product, Phil, because that's going to be public once I start using Phil's widgets, and everyone's going to know I'm using Phil's widgets. And if I'm including Phil's widgets as a component of what I'm sending out to my customers, well, I want to make sure Phil's a serious person. I want to make sure they care about quality. I want to make sure they care about the lifetime value of the product. I want to know that they're well engineered. I want to know all these things. And where can I go? I can go to your website. I pretty much know what you're going to tell me on the website. It's a forward facing, it's a public relations kind of tool. Social media, I do believe, looks a little more authentic and real, and that's where the cracks are going to show a little bit because it's harder to do because we tend to reveal more of ourselves there because it's fast and we go to gate. We don't have the production values. And if we go, part of the interesting conversation that was presented to me today, the area to improve, was that our social media for this particular client is looking so sophisticated and so elegant, it almost feels like advertising. It's losing a little bit of that edge of raw authenticity. And if we do that, then it'll be perceived the same as a website. So I think it was a great instruction from a CEO. Like we need a little bit raw, need a little less production value, which ironically enough, from an art standpoint, it's harder to do that than it is to do a really elegant piece because you've got to know all the rules of how to do it right before you can do it wrong and it still works. That's
Awesome.
true.
I love the rawness though. That's a great idea and a great suggestion, Sean. I love that. So much goodness, right? About centricity, right? The
Mhm.
pattern of how people change and those best practices you talked about today. I love that you mentioned about knowing your buyer well, getting a third party, trusted third party to run a voice of the customer, that art needs boundaries and not a blue sky, and then an engagement, right? We have to know the rules and how to do it well before we can kind of break it, if you will, and do it more raw. Really, really awesome stuff, Sean. You got a lot more great stuff to your point at FitzMartin.com. I love your website. You guys have got a lot of great stuff up there that is absolutely helpful for folks. You've got a centricity podcast, which is super helpful as well. But Sean, if people want to get in touch with you, where's the best place for them to go if they want to reach out and touch you and say, hey, man, I want to talk more about these ideas that you've got here?
Well, what's to say I'm not going to try to put the whammy on them and sell them stuff, because that's a pretty big risk.
Well, that you wouldn't be on the show if that was what you were going to do. So I'm going to give you my
That's
trust
fair.
because you've not tried. No, I mean it though, right? So that's the whole key here,
Yeah.
right? That's why you're here on the show because you are someone that I
Yep.
trust, or you can be
All
here.
right.
So
Well,
you're
just
listening, you're
shoot me
like,
an
hey,
email,
there you go.
Sean at
Oh,
FitzMartin.com, SEAN at FitzMartin.com. And don't spam me. I'm asking you, I'm begging you.
wow. Oh,
And that'll
that's
be great. And
fantastic.
a friend of Phil's is a friend of mine. I'll go the extra mile for you.
That is very true. I
And
love that. Nobody does
a
that.
good day with Phil is a good day, right? Any day with Phil is a good day.
Thanks, my friend. Yeah. But I love that. You gave us your personal email address, Sean at FitzMartin.com. SEAN, Sean at FitzMartin.com. I love that you did that. That takes some vulnerability, a little rawness there. And also, you asked no spamming. So you also gave us some boundaries. So you practice what you preach. Thanks, Sean. I appreciate you, man. Good stuff today.
Man, it's always, you've got an amazing thing going on, Phil. Appreciate you. I learn a lot when I talk with you.